work, one whole day to play. Come on, everybody, wear your roller skates today. It's Saturday, 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 it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, yeah.
Good morning. Happy Saturday. How are you? My week was pretty good. I'm in Georgia, as you can see. Came down here to visit my dad. Me and the boys, we really needed a change of scenery. All right, so let's get right into this week's shout outs. Thank you so much to Queenie, Elizabeth, Jennifer, Lee, and Marilyn. Your donations allowed us to hit the $2,000 milestone. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. So this week, I sat down with Lina Rage, an educator, a mother, and founder of Rebel Tutoring. Lina shared her journey as a Prep 9 kid to Wesleyan University and how being her authentic self led Lina to her educational philosophy, which guides her work. Key takeaways from today's conversation was network, value, skill, experience, and culture, and how this will lead young people to walking in their passion as it relates to their careers. All right, let's jump right into my conversation with Lina. And welcome to Shout Out Saturday. Today we are joined by my dear friend Lina Rage. Are we going with Lina Rage? What's your name, girl?
Rage.
Lina Rage. Okay, so Lina Rage, she is a native New Yorker, Bronx girl forever. She has almost 14 years in education in various capacities. Most recently, she's worked at a school in East Harlem as a teacher and interim instructional coach. Lina's long-term goal is to start her own school that is reflective of her educational philosophy, which states that readily available resources and experiences coupled with reflective curriculum and environment that is an asset-based and helps middle school age children begin to discover their worth and their voice by using academic success as a vehicle. Welcome, Lina.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So tell us, who was Lina at 16? I always like to start from the beginning.
Lina was angry. She was rage. Lina was rage at 16. So I actually was a part of the Prep for Prep program. So I went to boarding school. I was in Prep for Prep 9, and I went to boarding school in Massachusetts. It was a predominantly white high school, a predominantly white town. I don't know if you know about Marion, Massachusetts.
Nothing. Never heard
of it. One of the old, we settled here first towns, and has a lot of whaling money. So that really old, rich money. And obviously I was plucked from the Bronx, super smart, and the assumptions and just assuming I was there on an athletic scholarship, the assumptions that I wasn't as smart as my peers. I was just really angry. And I remember just thinking academically, I run circles around these people. Why do I feel so alone and so isolated? And that just made me just angry. And my home situation wasn't good either. So at 16, it was rage and just just feeling misunderstood. And then growing from that, I think that's when I discovered dance, and I started a dance team at that school. And I also remember that's the first time I had a real crush on a boy, and all the implications that came with that. And then specifically remember going back to New York after being in boarding school, and feeling rejected in a weird way, right? It was, oh, now you talk like a white girl. Oh, you went to that school, you think you better than us, kind of weird thing going on. And my mom had moved to New Jersey, so I had to start this whole new life, everything changed, literally everything. That's so weird that you picked that age, because everything changed for me at 16. It felt like everything was just tumbling down, and I had no control whatsoever in any aspect of my life, and that sucked.
So you graduated from that boarding school up in Massachusetts. And then tell us, where'd you go to college? Did you go to college? I don't know.
So I did. It's one of those things, like, I was raised in that house that, like, if I got less than an A, I got a whooping. So college wasn't really an option. It was, so you're going to college.
Okay.
And it didn't really matter. I don't think the understanding really about calibers of college were really something that my parents truly understood, aside from, like, the Americanized Harvard and Yale, you know, that everybody hears about. And so I went into kind of like my college search process crazy. Real quick backtrack, my high school college counselor, she and I got along personally, right? I felt like she was a real cool person. But when it came to my high school application process, she was shady as hell. Like, and
wait, stop there. I have a question, because I have thoughts about this. I always feel like a conversation with your guidance counselor can change the trajectory of your life.
Yes.
Keep going. Tell me more.
So my dream school was Columbia University.
Okay.
I have wanted to go to Columbia University since I lived in New York. I always thought, New Yorker for life. I'm never leaving here. I'm going to come right back after high school, you know, that kind of thing. And for my college essay, I wrote a poem. And it was a poem about growing up in New York and not quite fitting in, like being Latina, but not really feeling Latina, and then really being comfortable in Black culture and identifying heavily with that culture and how that created a conflict. I wrote a poem and I was really proud of it. It was like a 3-page poem. And my guidance counselor read it and she said, not for Columbia. And I wrestled with that. And I said, she knows better than me, right? She's this old white woman. She's been doing college counseling for years. You know, the first thing they tell you is, you know, my kids went to, and then they list, you know, their credentials. And so who are you, you know, 18-year-old girl to tell me that, you know, this is going to work for you? So I wrote a whole nother boring essay about, I don't even remember what it was about. That's how, like, disconnected I was from it.
Right.
And I applied early decision to Columbia, and I got waitlisted, and then I got rejected.
Okay.
And I truly believe that it was because I didn't represent myself from a true place. I did something that I thought would be accepted, you know, in a really, like, ridiculous way. So either way, I applied to all the other schools, every single other one, with that poem. That was the essay I sent. And when I got the big envelope from Wesleyan University, I literally threw it down the hallway because I couldn't comprehend what just happened, right? Like, I understood that Wesleyan was a good school, right? A great school. And to have them accept me with something that was genuinely reflective of me was really powerful and transformative for me. And that just let me know, like, Wesleyan was exactly where I needed to be. And if you guys don't know about Wesleyan,
tell us about Wesleyan, because I don't really know anything about Wesleyan. Tell us.
Wesleyan I say it was the best place for me, because when you are a person who struggles, especially with issues of identity, not knowing really who you are in every single way, you will find a place at Wesleyan, because Wesleyan had, and you know, and obviously they've undergone a lot, right? And they've had their racist past and their shit, but I don't know if I can curse, but I just did. But the idea is, like, there was a niche for everyone, you know, like, they had, you know, if you only wanted to be your first freshman year, you wanted to be around what you identified. So if you identified as Black, they had Malcolm X House. If you identified as Latino, they had La Casa. If you identified as Asian, they had an Asian house, you know. So in that way, it was, you know, very open. They had their frats on campus. And, you know, we had the normal frat experience, but they also had something called eclectic, which was like the anti-frat. So it was like this frat, I guess, but it was both sexes, I believe, and they would throw naked parties and sex parties. And
oh my God.
yes,
Wait, this for the kids.
I mean, it was in terms of empowering yourself to not have these very like antiquated visions or ideas of sex and sexuality. I think that was more, that was more the goal. It wasn't about going in there and doing crazy stuff. It really was about understanding consent, understanding, respecting boundaries, and to be in a space with people who could be just as sexual as you, but understanding how to navigate that in a non-awkward way, and feeling comfortable with your own body. I think those were the goals of Eclectic. And I think that Wesleyan really provided that opportunity for me to try so many things. And I met a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. And it was funny because we would all be like, this is like little prep. They call Wesleyan little prep because a lot of prep kids, prep for prep and prep 9, end up in Wesleyan.
Okay.
And I think that says something, because what prep for prep does is at a very early age, it tells you that you're not like everybody else, based on your intelligence. And that is, it hurts and harms. I mean, it helps and harms, right? Because now you feel kind of isolated and different, but you don't know why. And so Wesleyan recreates that prep community of like highly intellectual beings who like to have fun and like to ask tough questions and like to push themselves in ways that you wouldn't normally even think to push yourself. Like Lin-Manuel Miranda, Wesleyan alum, had to put that. Right? He wrote part of In the Heights while he wrote In the Heights partially while in his senior year at Wesleyan.
Wow.
I was a freshman. So that's the type of energy that was there and that was accepted. And
so it sounds like you felt very empowered at Wesleyan, and that it helped you form your identity as to who Lina is today.
Yeah, I just realized, like, I constantly struggle with this, like, I'm technically I'm Latina, my father's Dominican, my mom is Panamanian, and they tried to impose very specific views of the world on me that I never agreed with. And I was always seen as like the rebel, the black sheep. Why are you always pushing back? Prep helped me realize why I was the rebel.
Okay.
Wesleyan helped me realize why it was okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's fast forward. How did you get into education? How did you find your way to become a teacher, instructional coach? Tell us about that journey.
So it's actually pretty funny because I always ran from education. My mom was in education. She taught pre-K Head Start. My sister's in education. She teaches 7th and 8th grade math. And I was like, I don't want to be anything like you guys. So I honestly was running from it. And for people who have my experience, I graduated college in May and I was pregnant by July with my first child. And when I was pregnant with her, I was willing to take any job, right? And that said something. And I want to make sure I say this because it's one of my like points in thinking about what you're doing. Your value does get determined by what you're willing to accept for yourself. And because I was pregnant, I devalued myself and said, I just need to be able to survive and provide. And I didn't see myself as a valuable, like, I'm pregnant, but I'm a valuable pregnant person. And so I took a lot of like crappy jobs, just to bring in money, just to make sure that my kid would have what my kid needed. And in that, after she was born, I saw an ad for Chess in the Schools, which randomly was a program when I was in junior high. It was the one program that I actually like invested time in. My 3rd grade teacher noticed that I was selling test answers to other children and said, that's going to stop. And she made me learn chess on the computer. And then I joined the team. And Chess in the Schools would come in and send like a master teacher to come help the kid, teach us different strategies and different things. And so I was like, wait, I'm an alum of this program. So I applied, right? Obviously, and I'm going to say it.
So you went back.
Yes.
to a program that you used to participate in when you was in elementary and junior high school, and then you applied to it. So your network, you used your network.
Yes.
Okay, so some key words today is network and value.
Yeah.
Keep going. Thank you.
Wow, you made that connection for me, because I didn't even, I'm like, oh yes, that was my network. And it was a teaching job. So what you do is you go into, you create your own schedule, which is a really nice, like real first job to have. So I created my own schedule. I met with principals. I had to sit down and make the school schedule. And then I would go to 4 different schools a week. I took Wednesday off because, I hate Wednesdays.
Okay.
So, you work Monday, Tuesday, you take a break, you work Thursday, Friday, and you have the weekend. So that was like my 22-year-old or 23-year-old knowledge. And so I remember just being like, yeah, and I loved it. I loved every second I taught kindergarten through 8th grade. And every school that I worked at, the principal would ask me if I was a certified teacher because they were interested in hiring me. And when I say that I allowed that value compliment to just pass me, because in my head, this was just a stepping stone to what I was going to really do. I had no idea what that was.
Okay, so the job was a stepping stone to what you were really going to do, but you didn't know what you really were going to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
But you know what? It's interesting because we expect young people to come out of school and have it figured out, and we don't have it figured out. And it's through exploration, right? It's through trial and error that you find your niche.
It is.
And that is okay.
And that is more than okay. And I have this conversation at home, because I think that even at 25, I don't know why people think 25, 24, 26, that you should have it all figured out. I'm 37. I just figured it out. like it just happened.
Right.
Literally this year during quarantine. And that is because that survivalist mentality, it wasn't a factor. I had to stay home. I was still getting income. I had nothing but time to dedicate.
Right.
Either way. Oh, well, girl, we could talk for hours.
Okay. No. I want to keep on with this journey in education, and how you pivoted from chess in the schools, and how these principals kept asking you, are you a certified teacher? How did you get to become a certified teacher to coaching educators? What was that like?
So here's going to be the crazy part. I'm not certified.
Still. Okay.
So that, and that I think is the one message I also want to send. Once I understood what my value was, there was no stopping me, including, right, the pieces of paper that people said I had to absolutely have. I found a way. And so from chess in the schools, what I did was I worked there for about 3 years. And then I saw a posting, and don't make a face, but for Success Academy was looking for a chess teacher. And I know, trust me, I know. And I decided I'm going to go there, right? Like, it's a salaried job to do something that I know I enjoy, right? Like, I taught chess even in Spanish. Like, they assigned me to an ESL class and were like, good luck. Like, literally the homeroom teacher said, good luck. It was an 8th grade ESL class. And after the first day, he came back in the room, and he wasn't even supposed to leave the room, but he left the room. He comes back at the end of the period. The kids are all sitting down, quietly playing. And I didn't, like, once with the older kids, I didn't really talk a lot. And I would just go pieces away in 3. And once they started doing that routine, he looked at me, he said, how did you do that? I said, I talked to them with respect. I just came from a place of respect. Like, hey, you may want to do this, you may not want to do this, but it's going to help you in your life. So let's talk about it. And they were receptive. And most of them said that was like the most attention a teacher paid to them. So those memories stayed with me. And so when I saw this salary job, working with kids every day, teaching chess and being able to go on chess tournaments and like do these things, I jumped at the opportunity. 3 years in, I worked at four different of those academies. I founded two of them, one of which was in Bed-Stuy. And I fell in love with the culture and the families and the kids in Bed-Stuy. And I got offered a position to teach third grade. Never, and I will say that I had never taught before, but I know myself and I knew that I could do it. And I took that position and I busted my butt. I studied those kids' work every day. I had differentiated groups. It was insane how hard we, as a team, that Brooklyn team, that we worked that year just to make sure that no one, and the reason we did was because we felt that the network had counted us out of it. And so we wanted to make a statement. And our kids that year, that was the founding third grade year, 100% passed math and 89% passed ELA, including children who had IEPs, who had been basically told, the expectation is you probably get a 2, right?
Yeah.
And those were the groups that I was assigned, those kids. And we had a ball because I understood them. I got it. I was like, it's just that you don't learn the way the robot, right? There's a robotic way of learning. And then there's when your brain wanders a little bit.
Right.
And you need engaging to be able to bring that back. So from there, I was told that they wanted me to have a bigger impact. So I became, I was supposed to be a dean, and ended up being an assistant principal. And that was crazy, and a very big learning year for me in terms of how power can corrupt people. And at the same time, how really a community can really rally around children. And really come together. So that was it was a very interesting year. And I decided I don't like administration. And that's a powerful point. The reason I thought that I didn't like administration was because of the administration I was a part of. And I didn't make that connection at the time. So I allowed myself to believe that my place, right, was in the classroom. That's when I was having the biggest impact. And so I went back to the classroom. And I taught 6th grade ELA. And at this point we have, some kids that are really struggling to read, to be honest, and had really lost faith in themselves. And that's the second time it came around where I realized it really isn't about the actual content. It's if they feel self-worth, they rise. But if they feel, constantly beaten down by a number, and a number can absolutely beat you down, then they don't rise. It's just that simple, in my humble opinion. And so I helped a couple kids rise, and that for me was the most fulfilling. But I knew that my time there had to end, because I wasn't comfortable with some of the things that were going on. So I moved on to the next institution as a dean, back in admin. But again, I want to point out, I was still afraid to take the administrative positions that I felt like I was qualified for, which were those instructional positions. 1, because of the piece of paper, and 2, because as a brown woman, I was constantly being told what I was doing wrong and what I was doing right. And what I was doing right seemed to always be managing children, engaging families, right? So I allowed them to create my mental resume. And once that happens, it's really hard to break that cycle. So I did the job that was comfortable for me, not challenging necessarily, but comfortable. And I was a dean for 3 years. And by the 3rd year, I was tired of saying the same things.
Okay.
And some of those things were when you give a teacher feedback, and then your boss tells you that you're intimidating teachers, or that your tone is aggressive or whatever. And then when you see someone that is white give the same type of feedback, it is received. There are tears of reflection, and, all of a sudden it's fine. And so I started to call that out a little bit more. I think the second half of my 2nd year, and by the 3rd year, I was in full on rebel status. And I did get terminated from that job. And I'm so proud of that termination. It is the only one I've ever had. I've never, ever been fired from any job. But I'm proud that this one was because of my principles, and I know that it was. And so I left there. And again, that fear, I need a job, I need a check, I need to provide for my kids, because there are two of them now. And I took a job, went back to teaching again. But I also took that job because I believed in that mission of the idea of creating students with the language to be able to advocate for themselves, to push people to be anti-racist, right? So to really understand when someone is, being racist, whether it be overt or not, and having the language and the capacity to navigate those situations. That's powerful. But then I get there and I feel like, because we're raising them social, emotional, bar, our academic bar dropped. Then it was okay to curse at teachers. Then it was okay to not be in class for 20 minutes because you had girl drama. And I don't think that's fair either. I think that that's also racist, because you're saying that because who you are and where you live and your background, that we have to somehow cushion you way more emotionally than we would any other human.
So at that institution, you feel that the academic expectations were much lower for the students?
Yes. And in the other institutions, I felt like there was academic rigor, but at the sacrifice of them being humans. Like, they weren't allowed to be humans. It was, you respond in a certain way, you sit a certain way, you talk a certain way, you walk a certain way, and any signs of individuality, it was snuffed out, and it was looked poorly upon, to the point where, that does cause trauma. We have to think about that. Like, as an adult, I know that all the things that people said to me when I was young are the things that I'm afraid of now, right? I'm afraid, am I too loud? Am I too, like all those things. Now I have them ingrained, and it's hard to see them as actual power instead of these things that are holding me back from being successful.
But you know what? What's interesting is that your connection and the things that made you successful in the different positions that you had was that you saw the children.
Yes.
And that goes back to the beginning of your story, when you wanted to use this poem to get into Columbia, and this teacher didn't see you. So it's so important that kids see themselves in their teacher, and that their teacher actually sees them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And you, another thing I want to touch on, and if you want to elaborate a little bit more, is culture, right? Like, you're talking about the different cultures of the schools, and then also having to be able to fit into those cultures, right? And how do we teach students, or, how do we help students navigate between coming out of school culture into work culture, and figuring out, how do I fit in this space? Is this a space that I'm going to be able to grow and to thrive? Or is this a space where I have to dim myself if I want to make money? And I think that's a struggle. And how do we help students with that? Is there any words of wisdom that you may have, or a piece of advice?
I guess I would say the biggest thing I learned is the worst feeling you have is when you tell yourself, I knew it. Your body tells you. I really, really do believe that. I've had jobs where walking into the building, I've gotten completely nauseated and needed to physically vomit. That was my body saying, this is not the space for you. I do believe your gut and your body does tell you things, but I think you should also always actually, I don't know if if you're a list person, pros and cons, that type of thing, or if you don't be driven solely by the money, because at the end of the day, you can be making so much money, and if your mental health is deteriorating, that money doesn't solve any of that. And when you go home to that beautiful apartment or house, or you go riding on your boat, even in those moments, you're going to feel a void. because you're not fulfilling your true passion and your true purpose. And regardless of what anybody tells you, once you figure that out, oh my God, hold on to it, because it is one of the most beautiful moments you will ever experience. But it is also like you finally feel alive, like all the way alive. And I think that I didn't like to go 37 years not feeling alive, and then realizing that the moments I felt most alive was when I was in front of those kids, right? Whether it was doing an assembly or teaching a class or reading a poem or having a discussion. Those moments when your soul literally feels ablaze, it is the universe telling you this is part of your life's purpose. So don't ignore that, because it is there. And sometimes it may not pay the money you want right away, but gaining a little bit of experience in it, then you can create your own way.
So it sounds like we've got to help kids identify their interest.
Yes, big.
Right? And cultivate that interest to see if that interest turns into a passion.
Yes.
And that there's no real time frame in when they get this done, that we need to allow students to explore.
Yeah, like Viola Davis did not become an actress until she was 40. Oprah Winfrey didn't become like Oprah until she was past her in her mid-30s. I don't understand why we don't understand that there is no time to this. There's a little boy who's 6 years old and he's a millionaire because his parents put him on YouTube to review toys and it took off. Now, that's not everybody, but I do truly believe, like, and that is honestly like the top tenet of the school that I want to build, is that idea of there is no path to success except for the path you define for yourself.
Right.
I don't want kids, and I'm purposely targeting middle school because I call them the forgotten children. Everyone forgets about the middle school kids. But here's my whole thing. Who is filling your high schools?
Middle school.
You know what I mean? We're like, oh,
right.
You have to go to top high school to get into a top college. And you have all these charters with these college names on the doors. What are you doing? They have to go to high school first, right? And the thing about it is college is not for everyone, but high school is the one necessity, is especially in this country, whether it's a GED or a high school diploma, you need one of those to be able to move in this world. But we don't put any emphasis on high school the way that it should be. Because
you know what? Another thing that you talked a lot about was your skills, right? Your skills and what you brought to the table. And your skills are honed through experiences.
Yeah.
So
100%. Exactly. If we just went by college, like, right? Like, yeah, I have a bachelor's, but honestly, a bachelor's right now is, you know what I mean? Like, it's nothing. I have 14 years in every capacity in a school. And I'm realizing, it just took me the other day to realize, well, that was your journey because you actually believe that and I do believe this, if you are a person who opens a school, you should know how to do everybody's job. That's my personal belief. I have taught specials. I have been in the office. I have been admin. I've been a teacher. I think those are necessary in order for you to actually understand when you're hiring people what you're looking for.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have been able to do that with all that experience.
Yeah.
It's completely vital and valuable. And middle schoolers. Middle schoolers.
No, I mean, middle school is a chance to start to look at what your interests are. What do you like, right? And the basic thing about work is, what do you like?
Yep.
Right?
Because then it's not work. Then it's passion. Then it's purpose. Then it's fulfilling. Otherwise, work is literally you're doing labor to get, a means to an end.
Right.
I don't want to work. I want to live. And like that takes living in my passion.
Lina, this was awesome. So you know what? I wrote down some keywords. We talked about network, value, experience, skills, culture. And I think the biggest takeaway for me was seeing yourself, having students see themselves in the adults around them. That connection is so important.
Yeah, it is. And finding that even if there's just one person that you're like, oh, making that effort, because it's hard. It's hard. Any relationship to create one is hard, but I get it why kids are so apprehensive with teachers.
Right.
And I would, teachers need to be more open, right? And remember, like, what you did to me, put them back in that 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old body and say, did you listen the first time they told you to fold your hands? Did you, were you going 100% with everything that was told to you? Like, yeah, find an ally.
And we really want to be developing kids who can think on their own, right? And I mean, yeah, you got to follow directions, but you also need to be able to think. Exactly. and to make decisions and to figure out your path. And that and everything I heard here today is that it's a journey, right? And it's going to take time. So, final question. Any last, bit of advice that you want to share with our Liberated Success community? And then also, is there anything that you want to plug? Any of your social medias? You got any projects coming up?
So the biggest thing I want to leave is you are enough and you are so valuable. And I say that I want to point it out. I say that with a facial piercing. Ebony knows, but I'll show. I say that with my arms tattooed. I say that with my hair having some color in it. And the reason I'm pointing those things out is because we have been indoctrinated to believe that these are all signs of someone who is less than, not as intelligent, not as capable. You can be your full self and be successful in this world, 100%. And then plugs, Lina Rage on Instagram. I'm working with that a little bit more because I'm leaning more into the education reformer in myself, which is my true passion. So if you are a person of color or non-person of color and you have any stories about experiencing racism or any form of devaluement, like someone made you feel or pushed you towards that idea that you were less than, any of those stories, please DM Lina Rage. I'm making a collection of these stories and also using them to model to create my first school, hopefully coming soon. It will be a middle school, location TBD.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lina. This was great. So if you want to get at Lina, she's Lina Rage on IG. You can also email her for tutoring for your 2nd to 8th grade students at rebeltutoring@gmail.com. You may need some extra support with those reading packets, those math packets over the summer. And why not? Why not get the extra support? I know my kid needs it, so I'm definitely going to be reaching out. You know what? I think we are on to something with Career Exploration Saturday. These are real conversations with real people about their career journey. And a lot of careers start with an internship. Liberated Success, we are raising money for our first cohort of 15 students in a paid internship experience. Do you know that a $100 donation will pay for the internship hours for 6 hours for one student? That would be amazing if you made a $100 donation today. So you can go ahead and make a donation on my GoFundMe campaign. So as always, the link is in the comments on Facebook. It's a pinned tweet on Twitter. The link is in my bio on Instagram. Make that donation before you enjoy your Saturday. It's beautiful out. Get some sun. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Socially distance. All Black Lives Matter. See you next week.
One whole day to play. Come on, everybody.